Mrs. Harnois, judges, parents, faculty, and of course, students, to the Benoit Salisbury Annual Senior Oratorical Contest. The Senior Oratorical Contest is one of our school's most important events, and it has been truly an honor for Mr. Thibodeau and I to be part of this extraordinary competition. And it is indeed a competition. The rules, however, are pretty straightforward. Seniors choose from among 5 topics, and their speech must be between 3 to 5 minutes in length. Mrs. Gelsomino will act as our timekeeper, along with Mr. Stone. They will hold up a green card at 3 minutes, the green card at 4 minutes, and the dreaded red card at 5 minutes. Students will be penalized for going under or over the time limit. The scores are based on language use, delivery, organization, preparation, and content. The difficult task of scoring the individual speeches is left to the distinguished panel of judges. They are, and if you would please stand when I call your name, Mrs. Virginia Harnois, Smithfield School Committee. Vice Principal, Gallagher Middle School. Mr. Thomas Hines, Smithfield High School graduate class of 19, English teacher and mentor, students and faculty alike. Ms. Susan Barron, lecturer, Department of Communications at Bryant University. Robert Salisbury, former teacher, guidance counselor, vice principal. Before we go any further, I would just like to remind you to please turn off all of your cell phones. Please do not use your phone during the competition. I suspect that you knew not to do that. Thank you. The students do not know the order in which they will be called. I will ask you to not applaud as they are escorted to the stage, not to applaud. After the speech, by all means, of course, show your appreciation. Torture, starvation, incarceration. Many people will choose one of those over public speaking. So it is indeed a very courageous thing these people you see seated behind me are doing this morning, especially in front of a group of their own peers. I know that you will give them your undivided attention, your courtesy, and the respect that they deserve. And so now I will ask this year's participants in the Benoit Salisbury Senior Oratorical Competition to please stand and proceed to the chorus room. And remember, when I call their name, do not applaud as they walk to the podium. And they do not know, so this is a surprise that they're being told who is going to go first. Our first contestant is Miss Caitlin Taro. Please hold your applause as they're walking to the podium.
Senior year. This is it, the moment you've been waiting for. The year that everything changes. You go from being a young, anxious kid in a small town to a grown adult, ready to face the challenges and experiences that come along with that one word, adulthood. You finally get to focus on your future, your career, and the rest of your life. After this, you're on your own. You've learned what you need, and now you have to put it to use. There's no going back to being that feeble, innocent kid you once were. Personally, these years have taught me many things, such as the importance of studies, social activities, and what it means to truly be an individual. To be able to say that you have been able to find yourself is quite the accomplishment. Yet, is the accomplishments you made before this one that get you there? Maybe you made it into National Honor Society, or you finally got your GPA higher. Maybe you got the part you wanted in the play, or you got in the sports team you wanted. Whatever it is, you kept working for it. You never gave up on you. Now, as we all know, time doesn't slow down. We go through these, some of our best years, in the blink of an eye. You close your eyes to blink as they take your picture at the beginning of freshman year, to wake up sitting at a table, finishing your portfolio the night before it's due. Man, life's kind of crazy, huh? You experience so many things you might consider useless, when in reality, you look back to think one day about how they affected you. I mean, let's admit it, we've all sat up before and thought about how the smallest details could affect us. We usually either over or underthinking it. For instance, maybe tripping in the hallway or being late to class. Maybe something a bit bigger like missing a homework assignment or bumping into someone. Or even something like failing a test or skipping school. You may look back and think, man, I wonder what that kid I bumped into thought, or I wonder what would have happened if I had gone to school the other day. Regardless, we cannot go back and change the past. Along with school, this is a common concept of life. What if you had done that crazy thing your friends wanted you to try? Come on, everyone's had that happen too. We've all done and not done some crazy things, and yet we always question ourselves. We wish we could go back, either to relive or redo those scenes in our life. Sure, we can imagine many different outcomes. However, everything has one outcome, one chance, one result, and these, in multiple sequences, create larger situations, larger outcomes. Every sequence of events add up to our life resume, building up one on top of another, day after day, month after month, year after year, until everything turns into the crazy machination that is the world and all that we do. For ending words, I'd like to leave you with this. My advice to underclassmen, seniors, even teachers or parents in the audience. Please, don't take advantage of the beauty that is time. It is something that's irreplaceable. It is the reason we can live in a normal society, seeing as most things function on a schedule. It is the reason we go through night and day as what we know, different seasons, and years continuing. Don't let those years go by. There are so many precious moments in life that we look past to think, oh, well, it'll happen again someday. Maybe something similar, but the past never reoccurs. Life is memory, and memory is beauty. Don't ever doubt that you should live and do what your gut tells you to. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cosmo D'Elia. Good morning. While all of us in this room are sitting here, going about our lives, in whichever way we choose, there are lessons that my father has taught me that I would like to share. Whether or not you decide to use these lessons is entirely up to you. However, I can tell you that these values have been important in my life and have been helpful to me personally. It has helped me become the person that I strive to be. Now, growing up in an Italian family, it's almost a guarantee that you grow up Catholic. And as a young boy, you don't really understand the Bible at all. As said in Luke 6:31, do to others as you would have them do to you. My dad taught me very, very early on in life that it means treat others the way you want to be treated. It's a simple concept that many of us just don't seem to follow. Being a brash person doesn't get you very far in life. It's an easy way to make enemies, lose friends, and I can't think of many people who would possibly want to help you when you need a friend the most. Why would you be a genuinely mean person? Do you gain anything from it? How would you feel being on the receiving end of it? One thing is for certain, I know all of your parents didn't raise you to be a rude and cruel person, and I'm sure it wouldn't make them proud either. If you want to make a difference in your life, start by acting like an example. Next, respect is everything. It's a driving force behind our image. One thing that my dad never stopped preaching is to respect everyone, and I do mean everyone, which also includes people you don't necessarily like being around. A great example of that would be teachers. Their job is to help you, be there for you, and most importantly, to guide you. They know that some of the stuff you learn is irrelevant down the road, but it goes to show you have the capacity to learn and continuously learn. I could go on and on about respect, and I hope that this example goes to show you how small of a scale respect can go. So if you want to make a difference in your life, start by respecting everyone. Lastly, my father has always preached to be passionate about your dreams and desires. If you want something, work your tail off to get it. If you want something, don't keep people in your life that are holding you back from getting it. Don't keep people in your life that tell you you can't do it. Prove them wrong. Let them see it. Let them be envious of it. It doesn't mean throw it in their face. That goes back to respect and treating others the way you want to be treated. But let them look at you reaching where you want to be, where they said you couldn't go. Me personally, I always heard people tell me I couldn't be a pilot. I couldn't fly in the United States Navy. And you know what? I believed them for a while. I was just going to join the Navy, no college, just enlist and be gone from this town forever. My father told me, don't listen to them. Clearly they're holding you back. I was never an ideal student, naturally lazy, naturally procrastinator. And finally, I had enough. I changed my ways and started focusing more. Started doing my homework, and in turn, I did better on tests, my grades rose, and I was in a position to get into college. I applied to Bridgewater State University, and I got in. My major, aviation science with a concentration in flight training. My dream to fly is one step closer. So if you want to make a difference in your life, be passionate about your dreams and desires, and go full speed ahead, and don't look back. Now, I want to take a minute to thank the bald-headed guy sitting in the back right corner of the room, my dad, for always being there for me, for always believing in me, and for pushing me to be the best I can be. Without you, I'd be lost. I can look you in the eyes and tell you that I'm the person you want me to be, that I will always treat others the way they deserve to be treated, that I will always be respectful, and that I will always be passionate about my dreams and desires. So just thank you so much, and I love you. And finally, if you want to make a difference in your life, start by being the person you want to be. Thank you.
Our next contestant is Jaleesa Dias-Ward.
Growing up, a childhood wasn't something I really had. Sure, I played with toys, I watched Saturday morning cartoons, and I praised Hannah Montana, but something was missing. Having teenage parents, life was kind of rough. Some holidays turned into arguments, and some birthdays were spent throughout the course of a weekend. These were the things that I grew accustomed to, and honestly, everything seemed normal. In my eyes, normal was living with my grandmother, Vavoa, seeing Mommy at Mommy's house, and Daddy at Daddy's house. I knew who my parents were, and I knew that they loved me. That's all that mattered. The day that everything changed was the day that I got invited to my first kindergarten slumber party. A girl named Elise was turning 7, so I begged and begged to get permission to sleep over. Finally, I got a yes, and I felt like the happiest girl on the planet. The birthday party was as normal as any other 7-year-old girl's party would be, but something caught my eye. It wasn't the cake or the presents, no. It was the way Elise's mom and dad held each other, and the way they looked so happy. They're married and live in the same house, I thought to myself. That was something that was unknown to me. I remember feeling sad, but as a kid, I would always hide my emotions, how some things never change. A few days later, my mother and I went to the grocery store together. This day will forever be embedded into my mind because words slipped from my mouth that today I know I never should have asked. I looked at my mom and I said, "Why did you and Daddy break up?" She looked at me and almost instantaneously, tears flew down her cheeks. Oh no, I made Mommy sad, I thought. At 7 years old, a daughter looks at her mom as a god. So seeing her sad made me sad. The response I received is something I do not remember. I believe that this is because I wanted to block it out. As I grew older, I still always wanted to know what happened between my parents, but I never asked. They were young, and so was I. They grew up, and so did I. Little things in life started to change. I lived with Vava, saw Dad during the week, saw Mom on the weekends. Then I lived with Dad, saw Vava, and Mom here and there. Then Mom stopped coming around. I always questioned where she was and why she wasn't there. Yes, my father and Vava tried to make life as easy and as normal as possible, but the thought of my mom always lingered in the back of my mind. I slowly got used to her not being around, but then she slowly came back. Happy as ever, all I wanted was her. I dropped everything I'd ever known, packed my bags, and moved in with her. Things were great, but then became bad. At a young age, I was given heavy responsibilities, had a boyfriend, and put school last. I would think, I'm 14, I can do what I want. I'm 16, I can do what I want. My parents grew up young, so why couldn't I? Sophomore year, I met a boy who made me feel so special, and oh man, did I put him on a pedestal. He was 18, I was just turning 16. It was real. I believed I was grown, I could do what I pleased. I was looking for love and for seriousness. Looking back, I had all the love and seriousness that I needed. Where was it? Back home in Rhode Island. So once again, I packed my bags and moved. Then something hit me. I wasted so much time trying to be an adult that I missed out on some of the best years of my life. I hate high school, are the words that often come out of my mouth. This is because I spent too many days crying in the bathroom stall and too many nights feeling alone. I wish I could go back and tell that little 7-year-old girl that what she had was okay and that she was always loved, even if sometimes it was hard to understand because her family was different. So if I could change one thing in life that I've made, it would be that I grew up way too fast. Today, I'm standing in front of the student body talking about something I regret, when really, I should have written a speech about the excitement of senior year, or maybe even a speech about how courageous each and every single one of those seniors standing outside that door is. It took me a couple years of wandering for my light bulb to go on and for me to change my path. So now, I pass the torch to light your path. To all of my fellow classmates, to all of my fellow young adults, it is now your turn to share your story. Thank you.
Our next speaker is May McCall.
Started from left to right, reading the 6 dreadful words. My fingers were trembling, heart throbbing, head pounding, and mind racing. I initiated deep breathing, an attempt to soothe the panic. Breathe in and out. I stared at the computer screen filled with blank checkboxes, rereading the most difficult question of the entire registration process. What is your race? Select 1. One single question on the SAT registration form stumped me. 40 minutes passed, and I still could not answer with the required response. The applicable options yielded white, Asian, and other. But I realized right then and there, I'm not a single checkmark, and I'm not other. When I was younger, I saw myself the same as everyone else. Going to my cousins to celebrate Chinese New Year did not register to me as embracing my heritage. It was just a fun party with money, red envelopes, and key-pow dresses. My appearance set me apart. In 2nd grade, when a peer mocked me for my Asian skinny eyes, I still remained unaware. But my dad is white, I thought. A clueless 2nd grader, I thought I looked like every other Caucasian student in my class. We grew up in the same type of houses, We did the same activities. We went to the same type of school. During this period of my life, the checkbox dilemma was non-existent. I never understood that being half Asian was different until other people pointed it out. Flash forward to my junior year of high school. Sorting through the labels that defined my race on the SAT form was agonizing. Never before had I questioned my ethnicity to this extent. I had to select one box to answer this question. No elaborations allowed. One answer. Am I white or am I Asian? Or am I other, because there's simply no box that is devoted to biracial people? Whichever box I check means I'm denying part of my ancestry. Ancestry that's important. Ancestry that stems from either my mother's Chinese heritage or my father's Black Irish roots. One simple question on the SAT registration form was the first time I had to re-examine my identity and determine who I was. I reflect on comments remembered throughout my middle and high school years. Hey Meg, you're only smart because you're Asian. Meg, do you like math? I know you do, because you're Asian. Or my favorite, Meg, what does dog taste like? Really? I laughed along with my peers at these statements because I simply did not know how to react. In response, I distanced myself from my Chinese identity. I did everything in my power to ensure I did not appear nor act Asian. I became embarrassed, self-conscious at the fact that I was Chinese. Why couldn't I just be like everyone else? I unchecked this half of my identity until junior year, when I realized that being biracial is beautiful and unique, until I realized the beauty in being one that is made of two. Now I ask you, what boxes are you trying to fit into? What are you giving up right now that defines who you are? What have you sacrificed in order to fit in with your peers? I unchecked Asian so I could be white. Have you unchecked smart so you could be popular? Have you unchecked LGBT so you could be straight? Have you unchecked creative so you could be athletic? Have you tried to blend in with everyone else because being the same is easy and being different is hard? It took me 17 years to celebrate my difference. Don't wait that long to celebrate yours. Unlike the SAT registration question, you can be more than one box. And by the way, if anyone from the SAT committee is listening, if someone is going to put me into a box, it's going to be a box of my choice. I will no longer be boxed into Asian. I will no longer be boxed into white. And I will certainly no longer be boxed into other. I choose HAPA, mixed race Asian descendant, and proud of it. Thank you.
Our next contestant, Mr. Ryan Strict.
Politics. From the Greek word poly, meaning many, and ticks, meaning blood-sucking parasites. I can certainly sympathize with those of you who may want to tune out after hearing the dreaded word, politics. For some, it is not a particularly exciting topic. However, my goal today is not to persuade you or your vote, but rather ignite a spark within. I hope that by the end of this speech, you may understand that all students and adults, like each and every member of this audience, can work together to truly prosper and succeed in their lives. Even though politics provides mocking from citizens and snickers from comics, it is still part of our daily fabric. As citizens of the world, it is our right, as well as our duty, to embrace the political flow of life. You don't have to set your eyes on the White House or the Capitol. No. What I am simply saying is that we, the people, can become the leaders of this community, country, and world. For 4 years, I've been a leader within the class of 2016. Now, I know many of you might be thinking that the purpose of class government is somewhat meaningless. You might be thinking that once we leave these halls behind, nothing that we did here will matter. But I must disagree with that conjecture. It is not the things we accomplish while we are here, but rather the lessons that we take away when we leave. Being a class officer was never about adding a line on my college application. There is no scholarship involved, and there is no compensation exchanged. For me, serving in these positions reflects how mainstream politics should be: of the people, by the people, and for the people. I will agree with most of you in saying that the small setting of school government does not compare to our mainstream political stage. However, the correlation between large and small scale politics is certainly obvious when referring to the true definition of public service. If any of you watch the news, read the paper, or have recently caught an episode of Saturday Night Live, you will know that we are in the midst of an election year. Many question the qualifications and beliefs of all candidates involved, yet individual viewpoints and diversity are what exemplify the American way of life. No matter the political affiliation or social standing, every American has the inalienable right to participate in government. I believe each and every member of this audience, young and old alike, should rise up and become a part of the decision-making process that surely affects their lives. As I stand before you today, I ask you, as a citizen of this country, to stand up and be counted. Do not vanish into the voiceless background. From the President of the United States to those sitting before me today, we are all on the same level. We are all members of this democratic process. All should become engaged in the decision-making process of your community and your country. Barack Obama once said, "A change is brought about because ordinary people do extraordinary things." You should participate at any level or at any capacity, from simply knowing the issues affecting you to helping those not in a position to help themselves. Without choosing a label on the political spectrum, you can influence your community. You can pursue a fulfilling path of involvement and change. Here at Smithfield High School, I encourage you to discover your own path. Develop your own shape. Create your own definition of politics and share it with the world. Seize the opportunity, for embracing your future and all its uncertainties is the only advice you can receive to truly flourish. Thank you.
Our next speaker is David English.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey to a mysterious place. This place is one full of winding corridors, familiar faces, and no exposed shoulders. I am, of course, referring to high school and all of the jovial and trying experiences that come with it. But whether you be a freshman or a senior, some of us are eager to simply move on, dreaming of the better things in life, such as a career, success, and student debt. But before you jump that proverbial ship that is secondary education, my friends, I implore that you take a look around you and reflect. In exactly 2 months from now, I, along with my fellow seniors, shall be graduating. And this elicits some sort of reflection about my own life, where I've been, where I am, but perhaps most importantly, where I shall be. We've all been asked that dreaded question. So, what do you want to do? This is a question I've been asked more than once, and to this I must reply, I don't know. It is in this that I'm reminded of a quote, not by one of the Stoic philosophers of antiquity, but one that I attribute to my own brother, Chris. He told me that the principal question of school should not be, what do I want to do, but rather, who am I? As much as it is a pursuit of knowledge, it should be a pursuit of self-discovery. And now, as I stand on the precipice, these words have taken on greater meaning to me. So this begs the question, who am I? And that is an answer I cannot provide, but if you want that answer for yourself, all you need do is take a step back from the world and reflect. As I was writing this speech, I kept on searching for a singular event in which I had learned something worth sharing, something that made me who I am today. And every time I bring a pen to paper, I'd come up short, failing to find the right words. Ultimately, it occurred to me, I had been looking at it wrong the entire time. Life is a culmination of successes and losses, adversity and diversity that make you unique, not a single instance. When I was in 8th grade at Gallagher Middle School, I was placed in Connected Math 8, which in my mind was the lower level math. But I was given the impression that I could not go beyond and that this was my lot in life. And for a time, I believed that. We should never live by our mistakes. I needed to think about my life and my past, otherwise I would be living wholly by other people's experiences and opinions, which is something that I cannot do. One should never let a single person or a single experience, whether it be a bad grade or a mistake that we've made, define who we are. We should learn by these mistakes, not live by them. High school is a strange journey, but the same could be said for life. Take time to reflect upon and appreciate all of your teachers, your friends, and your life in its entirety. All of the things that make you, you. As to the ever-elusive question, who am I? It's an answer that I cannot provide because I'm still someone who's learning and growing from other people and experiences. So do not restrict yourself with the question of what do I want to do. Instead, enliven yourself with the idea of who am I? We may not immediately have the answer to that question, and that's okay. That's great. Allow the person that you are to define the work that you do, not the other way around. To quote David Bowie, I think aging is an extraordinary process whereby we become the people that we always should have been. That process is life. And regardless of whether we are freshmen or seniors, student or faculty, we must reflect upon who we are and embrace that process. Thank you.
Our next contestant is Mr. Zachary Cody.
Good morning, Smithfield High School. It's an honor to be here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Zachary Cody, or Zach, with a K for short. Now, I'd like to begin rather inquisitively by asking a very pressing question. So, why did the chicken cross the road? Seriously, why? We all know it was to get to the other side. But again, I ask, why? As simple and well known as that question is, what I believe this often overlooked joke is truly doing is poking out the fact that a human's natural tendency is to be far too concerned with what's going on with the other side. So concerned, in fact, that it can be as devastating to our own lives as it would be for that chicken to cross 44 to get to Sonic's half-price shakes. Now, before I get back to poultry making its way across the road, I would like to tell you guys a little bit about a book that I read this summer called Mindset. You may be asking yourself, did he actually read that book? Well, I really did. But was it absolutely necessary for that book to be read? Mr. Kelly? Mr. Kelly? Yes, of course it was. Regardless of his intentions, I learned something. After crawling through over 200 pages of mind-numbing redundancy, I barely escaped my sanity. And then I thought to myself, hey, this might be a great microcosm for high school. You know, where it's boring, repetitive, and seemingly purposeless, to the point where it seems like there's no end. But I finished Mindset, and I am soon to finish high school, pending a successful portfolio presentation. And I'm beginning to believe that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So I've developed my own mindset to be successful. Not the growth mindset, certainly not the fixed mindset, but the right mindset. And I will illustrate my point by calling each and every one of us chickens. I was thinking of standing up here and giving a tearjerker about losing my grandfather before I had the chance to impress him, or being picked on in elementary school because of a speech impediment that made it hard for me to interact with others for nearly a decade, or about my aunt's bravery with her ongoing battle with bone, lung, and brain cancer. But no, everybody's got their stuff, and the quicker you realize that everyone is going through stuff, the less alone you feel, and stuff falls on you. And one thing I've learned all too well is that being bitter gets you nowhere, and allowing yourself to be miserable makes it that much more difficult to climb out of whatever hole life may have dug for you. Life can get inexplicably rough, but you can never let the stuff hide the fact that life is always, in the end, a beautiful thing, if lived with the right mindset. Everyone is simply a product of their experiences, and one's demeanor, or mindset, can either be the hindrance or the catalyst of their progress on the ominous pursuit of happiness. Now, the pursuit of happiness is the very thing that drives me the most, because in my mind, you can have all the money in the world, the most friends, hit the illest dab, but if you're not genuinely happy, what's any of that really worth? And the really unfortunate thing about it is you never truly understand your happiness until it's nostalgia. That's why I believe to be successful, you need to forget trying to change everything and everyone else, because you can only control yourself and your mindset. So I challenge everyone in this auditorium today to live with the right mindset, to stop complaining and trying to change everything else, and change yourself in your mindset. And though life may make you feel like a chicken desperately making an attempt for the other side, it's imperative to remember everything you have on your side of the road. Be a brave little chicken. No matter how long or how rough the journey ahead may seem, you need to remember to enjoy the ride, and ultimately, not to take life too seriously, because hey, you'll never make it out alive. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sam Latos.
You are better than you think. Regardless of how many times you felt lost and alone, you are and have always been good enough. If someone had said these things to me a few years ago, I would be shaking my answer. Even though you may not see it now, without trying, your life is valid, it's progressing, it's important. Getting help is necessary for all of us in life, but when it comes down to it, the only person you need to believe in is you. It took a long time for me to see that for myself, and to see myself as anything other than a mistake. Something that was put here by accident and had no vision, no drive, and nobody to talk to. On July 9th, 2000, I lost someone who I believed for a long time I couldn't live without. That was the day that my mother lost her battle with breast cancer. 2-year-old me had no idea what I had lost. I didn't get the chance to know her very well or get to retain any real memories. I didn't get the chance to memorize the details of her face, and I don't know what her voice sounded like or which thumb rested comfortably on top of the other when she clasped her hands together. All I know is that she was and is my mother, and that I love her more than words can ever describe. That is something I have grown to be able to say without knowing that is enough. It is enough because it has to be. I didn't always realize that, And so I grew up feeling cheated, lost, and angry. Angry that I didn't get to experience what all the other little girls did. Angry that I was left to fail at figuring out life and love. Angry at being cheated out of what everyone deserves. The luxury of a nagging mother's voice, saying that she loves you every day. With the weight of this loss, I grew up feeling alone. Everywhere I went, I felt out of place, and I felt that it would be in everyone's best interest for me to go home and lay under my covers, staying out of the way. With this on my mind, I grew up with depression and uncontrollable social anxiety. It is important to know the difference between not dealing with one's problems and taking them into consideration and learning something. Don't put your own feelings on hold, and please do not think that your problems are not valid. I wish I had said something about how I had been living so much earlier than I did. An important lesson that I took away from my childhood and my early teenage years is the importance of letting go. By holding on to toxic feelings like anger and loss, you are putting the possibility of recovery on hold. It may seem impossible right now, but whatever you are going through, you will get through it. The hardest part of overcoming it is getting help. Telling a close friend, parent, grandparent, or professional. It is scary. It is unfamiliar. It is the best thing I have done for my health. When I was 15, I thought that the moment I stopped actively grieving over the loss of my mother was the moment I would truly lose all connection with her forever. This resulted in my depression spiraling out of control. I hated who I was, and I hated every aspect of my life. That is when, with incessant convincing from family, that I sought help from both a therapist and a psychiatrist. It took some time, but my therapist helped me realize that I am more than my depression, and that I was not limited as long as I was willing to try and get better. I realized that it is important to let go of people and not memories, and to let go of anger, but always hold on to the validity and the lessons that it has taught you. I now have days where I actually wake up feeling happy, and I give myself credit for that. The best thing I ever did for myself was speaking up and getting help. What I want for all of you is to be happy. When I think of how far I have come, I think of my mom. I remember feeling the loss and how much it held me back, and then I realize all I have done to overcome it. For this, I believe that my mother is proud of me, and for that, I'm proud of me too. Thank you.
Our next contestant, Miss Miranda Grundy.
Oblivious. Adjective. Not aware or not concerned about what is happening around oneself. If there was one word I would have never used to describe myself, it was oblivious. I've always considered myself to be a very observant person who makes an effort to be knowledgeable about a variety of topics and concepts. So 5 months ago, as I sat in my writing class, I felt uneasy holding in my hands an article entitled, "White People in America Are Completely Oblivious," by Tim Wise. Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, and Rodney King. These were just some of the names that flashed across the pages of the article, meaningless and hollow to me. I knew these were names that I should have recognized, names of people whose stories I should have known, but as I flipped through page after page, I received an eye-opening wake-up call. Trayvon Martin, an African-American unarmed 17-year-old, was shot and killed by an off-duty neighborhood watch coordinator in Sanford, Florida, February 2012, after being chased down by car and on foot on the basis of seeming suspicious. Tamir Rice, an African-American child, just 12, was shot and killed in Cleveland, Ohio, November 2014, when 2 police officers mistook his airsoft gun for a loaded pistol. Living here in Smithfield, Rhode Island, it's hard for us to grasp that such acts of violence are taking place in this very country. How can such systematic oppression still be so prevalent in 2016? As Wise's article confronted me with more and more instances of police brutality and injustice at the expense of African Americans, I was overwhelmed by my own ignorance. I was forced to see the truth. I was oblivious. I was oblivious to these people, oblivious to their stories, and oblivious to the bigger issues their names exemplify. I was living a life shielded from the reality that African Americans face every day. A life so sheltered by white privilege that I was too blind to see the struggles that my fellow Americans, my fellow community members, even my fellow peers were facing and are still facing today. Together, as a society, we label the Black American community with so many stereotypes that influence the way they live every day. Tim Wise's words struck me hardest when he implored me to look at matters of race through eyes that directly feel the impacts of these stereotypes and prejudices. He writes, "Imagine what it must feel like to walk through life as the embodiment of other people's fear. To be the physical representation of what marks a neighborhood as bad, a school as bad, not because of anything you have actually done, but simply because of the color of your skin." I can't imagine. I can't imagine living with this label, but after reading this quote, I know I have to try. This is a reality that I myself, and most of you in the audience today, do not have to live. But does that make it acceptable for us to remain unaware of it? Does that make it acceptable for us to deny its existence? White privilege, a transparent preference for whiteness, whether it be held purposefully or not, is a ubiquitous truth that must be understood. Its presence, which still pervades so many different aspects of our society, must be acknowledged. Acknowledge the fact that the high school graduation rate for white Americans is 87%, while it is a much lower 72% for African Americans. Acknowledge the fact that a white male's likelihood of being incarcerated is less than 1/6 of an African American male's. Acknowledge the fact that the poverty rate for white Americans is under 10%, while the poverty rate reaches over 27% for African Americans. Acknowledging this privilege and its impact on your life is one of the most crucial steps in creating a community that is open to working towards change. If we, as white Americans, can open our eyes to this concept and become allies instead of adversaries in the African American community's battle for true equality, for a society in which the color of their skin does not hold them back from opportunities, only then is there hope for a culture in which all people are treated equally. Taking a closer look at the racial inequality that still exists in our country today has opened my eyes to the need for a raised awareness and a collective understanding of the matters at hand. That's why I'm standing up here to talk to you today. It is certainly no simple feat, and some would say it's not my place, but I know now that silence is a choice that further contributes to the problem. We have the power to dismantle white privilege and its grasp on our society, and from there dismantle the racism that comes hand in hand with it. We cannot continue to isolate, stereotype, and oppress the African American community. I've chosen to open my eyes to what is happening around me, and I ask today that each of you make the choice to do the same. Oblivious, adjective, something we must refuse to be.
Our next speaker is Fallon Waters.
The teenage years are often a time when people begin to understand their own identity, who they are as an individual, or who they might want to become in the future. But sometimes discovering who you want to be can be difficult when you're unsure of who you are or who you were in your past. On March 29, 1998, Sun Dongxia was born in Fidong, China. On March 29, 1999, Fallon Sundong Waters was adopted into the loving home of Wendy and Stephen Waters. For as far back as I can remember, I've always known I was adopted. I mean, it's kind of obvious. My parents did everything they could to keep the culture in mine and my sister's lives. I assumed to give us some kind of connection to our past. I would attend Chinese classes to learn the language, celebrate every Chinese New Year in a silk dress accompanied with a mandarin collar and tightly braided frog fastenings, and every year attend a reunion with all the other girls who were adopted along with me. As years passed, I grew older and even less willing to comply with my parents' decisions. The second I was handed a book filled with nothing but Chinese characters was the day I decided I was done. Why did I have to participate in something that none of my other friends had to be a part of? So, the Chinese lessons stopped, Chinese New Year became just another excuse for non-authentic Chinese food, and the reunions became less frequent. As I grew older, I wished more and more that the lessons continued, the New Year celebrations were as special, and the get-togethers remained as exciting as they seemed to my 9-year-old self. I've realized that in a way, the culture has grown out of me, and the lessons, dresses, and get-togethers were not the punishment I believed them to be, but a way for my parents to tell me it's okay to have that reminder of where you're from. Imagine being brought into this world with no knowledge of where you came from. Over the years when teachers asked the class, how much did you weigh when you were born? Or what time were you born? Or even, which parent do you look most like? I would slowly sink into my chair as if to hide, hoping they would not call on me to answer because I didn't know the answers to the basic questions everyone else around me did. In history class, we had to create family trees. I created 2. One went as in-depth as my parents' memories would allow, while the other simply held 2 branches extending from my name, both reading, unknown. I have an entire year of my life missing, filled with personal information I will never be able to recover. Part of understanding who you are as a person comes with family history, the traits you have accumulated genetically from your mom and dad. People often say, oh, Jenny has her mom's eyes, or wow, Jeffrey looks so much like his dad, but I will never know if I smile like my mom or have a laugh like my dad's. For example, whenever an Asian man walks by, oh, look, Fallon, that could be your uncle, is the joke I often hear. And I usually laugh because I do find it genuinely humorous. But I also cringe when the reality of the statement hits me. I have no information on my birth parents or any of my biological family members. For all I know, I could have a big brother or even a little sister circling somewhere out in this world. I even wonder if my birth parents ever think about me and what I'm like. I wonder if they spend time thinking about the life I've created for myself. I hope I made them proud. But the biggest question that holds me back is why? Why did my birth parents give me up? Why was I not good enough? What kind of horrific hardship must they have had to endure to make such a drastic decision? Will I ever find out who they are? Probably not. So far, her biological parents still cannot be found out. Words quoted directly from one of the many important documents brought back from China. Do I want to go back to China? Do I want to find my birth parents? Yes and no. Seeing China is definitely on my bucket list, but when it comes to finding the people that brought me into this world, it's difficult to find the desire to bring them back into my life. They left me by that building for a reason, whether it be selfish or selfless. I have to look at it in a way that acknowledges the fact that although such a huge part of me is missing, that gap has been overwhelmingly filled with the love and support of my family, my real family, the people who have loved me from the beginning. So, even if I never truly find out who I was then, that's okay, because I'm ready to discover who I am today and who I'm willing to become tomorrow. Thank you.
Our final contestant, Ms. Theodora Vasella.
How many of you have had this experience? You're at a family dinner, and the first question everyone asks you is the dreaded, so, what college do you want to go to? Followed by, what do you want to major in? I don't know about all of you, but I'd rather get a cavity filled than answer these questions one more time. I remember being a freshman and sophomore thinking, oh, no big deal. I don't have to worry about any of that college stuff until senior year. Then, it's winter of your senior year, and you're awake until 11:59 p.m., hoping you'll make the application submissions deadline before midnight. I actually put off writing my college essay until the day before applications were due, because the whole thing just seems so daunting to me. I tend to ignore things that I'm afraid of, like spiders, Indian food, and college applications. As if being a teenager wasn't hard enough, we are then faced with the possibility of leaving the safe haven of our hometown, family, and friends. We are forced into a whirlwind of tremendous amounts of change and unfamiliarity, and we're supposed to be happy about all of this. I just got the whole driving and curfew thing down, and now not only will I not have anyone to account to, but I'm on my own. Then, once off to college, and after finally adjusting to freedom, we come home on break and have to abide by our parents' rules again. I mean, talk about a contradiction. Graduating high school and moving on to college or a career isn't set in stone, which is something I didn't understand until this year. I can't even decide what I want for dinner, and I'm expected to know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm having a difficult time understanding it's okay to not know. In fact, a recent study by the Federal Reserve estimated that only 27% of people have a job closely related to their major. That leaves a whopping 73% of college graduates who are not working in their field of study. When I was little, cooking was always my passion, and to some degree, it still is. And when an adult would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would always answer, a chef. This was before I knew about the long and irregular hours, the strenuous physical labor, the low pay, and the likeliness of being confined to the same daily menu, which means no creativity. As we get older, our passions seem to be masked and altered by the reality of pay scales and profitability, and less by creativity. And yes, of course there are plenty of chefs in the world who do get to be creative, and do make a financially rewarding paycheck. But the point is, we are oftentimes shown, especially through the media, the glamour of an occupation and not the reality of the hard knocks and hard work that went into achieving these jobs. I do believe, however, that our life's careers will be more about the experiences we have throughout our lifetime, and college should be seen as a stepping stone and the opportunity to enhance one's knowledge about the world around us, and less about the prospect of one's final destination. As I stated earlier, most people do not major in what they study in college, but that does not mean it was a wasted education. Take my great-grandmother, for instance. After having no previous education, she decided to go to college at the age of 63 years old, and was awarded a day in her honor by the State House. My grandmother attended floral design school at 50 years old in Boston, where she then opened her own floral shop. My father emigrated from Italy at the age of 13 years old and became a laborer who did not attend college, but presently owns his own automotive shop. Lastly, my mother attended 3 colleges, possesses 5 degrees, where she now works at Rhode Island College. Who they became was and is due to their experiences, not because of their education or lack thereof. But I digress. My point is, knowing who you are and what you want to be is a process, and not something that happens just because we decided to study zoology at Princeton. In fact, many people are more confused after college than they are before. I leave you with this. Where you start isn't always where you finish, so pave your own path, and remember that it is never too late to do what you love. Thank you.
Please join me in congratulating the 11 senior speakers one more time. As the tabulators finish their calculations, Mrs. Dempsey and I would like to thank the following people. The members of the administration for supporting this competition throughout its rich 27-year history. Mrs. Chartier and the music department. Mrs. Gelsomino and Mr. Stone, our team of timekeepers. The members of the math department for acting again as our score tabulators. Alex Brown, our technical director today. Mrs. Felici and Mr. Hurley, our escorts. The sophomore class providing our stand stand and be recognized again. The Student Council for their generous donation of our trophies, which will be presented at Senior Honors Night. And of course, we must thank the coaches, Mr. Burns, Mr. Cabral, Mrs. Calisi, Mrs. Carty, Mrs. Gliatone, Mr. Hassel, Mrs. Pimentel, Mr. Spring, and Mr. Zabelli. And finally, on behalf of all of the senior speakers, I would like to thank Mrs. Dempsey, without whom this event would not and could not take place. I will now ask our friends Mr. Daniel P. Kelly and Mr. Bob Salisbury to join us on the stage to help announce the winners.
Mrs. Salisbury.
So before I read these, a couple of weeks ago, I wrote a blog post about why I love Smithfield High School. It was right after the Unified game, and I was so impressed with the student body and how well you guys handled yourselves, how hard you cheered for Situate, for Smithfield. You've continued that over the last 2 weeks or so. I cannot tell you how proud I am of how you've handled yourselves on Monday, this event today, Unified, how you carry yourselves in the building. Congratulations and thank you. I'm very proud of you. I was told that this was mathematically impossible. We have a tie in third place. Our third place winners are Miranda Grundy and Fallon Waters. Second place, Theodora Vasella. And our winner of the 2016 Senior Oratorical Contest, Miss May McCauley.
Congratulations to the winners, but congratulations to everyone. Can we please have a round of applause? Thank you very much. I will ask the contestants and the family members to please remain. And now the rest of you can go back to bed.